digging through the dust where the quiet secrets sleep, finding threads in parchment that the shadows try to keep, unveiling the truth brick by brick. The wall comes down, turning lost pages into the jewels of a crown. Oh, we are the bridge, we are the story yet told, holding the hands of the future, turning the new into gold. Just the unveiling of us, just the unveiling of us. Digging through the dust where the quiet secrets sleep, finding threads in parchment that the shadows try to keep, unveiling the truth brick by brick. The wall comes down, turning lost pages into the jewels of a crown. Oh, we are the bridge, we are the story yet told, holding the hands of the future, turning the new into gold. Just the unveiling of us, just the unveiling of us.
Hi there and welcome. Thank you for joining us. We're on live, Facebook Live, for the second time here in this space. Welcome, beautiful souls. I am Gina, being your host. The second episode of the Unveiling of Us. And this episode is going to be dedicated to ancestry, genealogy. Those of you who are interested in finding out more about who it is that you think you are. I certainly thought I was someone else. I definitely had a different kind of roots impression of my ancestry. I really, when I started thinking about who I was and what I was made of, I really had a different impression. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about how I got started in this work. So when I was just 14 years old, my curiosity started coming to light about who I might be. And the more I started to express that and started asking my family questions about who I might be, the main question was who and why was I being, and everyone else in my family had different last names, and why was it that my family carried a certain last name and we were the only beings in the family? And so I thought it was a pretty straightforward question, but it came out to be a very complicated question, a very in some cases offensive question to the elders of my family. So many of them elected not to engage. They would not answer my question. And I talk a whole lot more about my journey in my new book coming out called The Shadows Beneath Thy Hand. And the Lord just downloaded this book recently, and I got the really great opportunity to tell my story from start to finish. So that narrative will be released on July 30th, and with it will be a companion I've written also to help those of you who are looking to get into the ancestry, more and more, kind of a step-by-step tutorial on how to go about researching your family. So without further ado, let's get into it. It is 6 o'clock sharp and we are getting started. So let's look at the first thing here, which is I wanted to talk about a few things. The main first thing I wanted to give kind of a tidbit or tip on is, of course, researching your family. There's always your local library. So if you have never done this work before, you want to first start, let's back up for a second. You want to first start with your elders. So as I said, my elders on the Bing side were not very forthcoming when it came to the information that I was inquiring about. So I had to go a different route. So luckily, I had the advantage of having a cousin on my mother's side, Badger cousin, who worked in the library. Cynthia, God bless her soul. She's gone on to be with the Lord, but she was a blessing to me during this time. So she found out that I was researching information, looking for information. Both sides of my family are from the Jacksonville area, so she started collecting archives for me. I didn't know how to use microfiche or microfilm at that time. And so having a family member who knew how to navigate that was really, really helpful. And so if you have library card, this is a perfect way to get started. So the second thing that you can do is definitely start researching those archives. You want to maybe, you can research archives from the library. You can also go to places like familysearch.com. You can also go to familysearch.com. There's AfroGenius. There's a number of free places you can use before you get really deep into the Ancestry. Now, I paid for a subscription to Ancestry.com. It's the best investment I ever made. So, hold on just a second. Let me get the background noise. Hey, I'm live. So, sorry about that. So the second thing that happened that really blessed me was, aside from my cousin working for the library, was learning then how to navigate and look at those census records. So I did not necessarily understand the census records that I got. So here's the thing, my cousin thinks she's doing me this great big favor, and I get the census records and I don't know how to read them. I don't know what this is. I see, family member's name and it's highlighted, and there's, it tells me where they lived and maybe where their parents were born and where they were born and, that sort of thing. But it's not really giving me anything. And so it wasn't until I learned, in fact, I didn't learn very much about census records in terms of how to navigate and use them until I was actually in recent years. So there's a couple of things on the census that you should know. First, that African Americans were not necessarily recorded as human beings, full human beings until 1870. So all before that, everything that was recorded in 1860 and 1850 were white human beings. So it wasn't until 1870 that we even really show up. Now, if you have the fortune, like I had recently, I had a situation where relatives showed up on my mom's side in the 1860s and 50s records. That is golden. That is something rare. That is something you will not find on a regular basis. So 1860 record shows that either the person was white or they were a free inhabitant, and then free wasn't necessarily free. Free was better than slavery, but it wasn't free. So if you happen to show you had a relative like mine that showed up on a free inhabitant record, that could mean that they were, especially if they were listed as B or MU on that record, that means that they were mulatto or black, and they usually 9 times out of 10 they lived next door to the person they either worked for or had been a slave to. If you were free, you weren't free. You're free. You weren't like how black people, we say free. We double words when they don't really mean what they mean. So he wasn't free. He was free, but he wasn't free. And so then later I found that that record was more of a register showing that he lived next door to the person he worked for, and he worked for $1 in food. So according to that register, he worked for $1 in food, and I was flabbergasted by that. And so my husband and I got into a conversation, and he went and researched that $1 in 1860 was worth 40, like the equivalent of $40. So that made me feel a little bit better. But $40, and I wanted to know like what that register meant. Like, is that $40 a month or $40 a year? You know, what that really meant. So that being said, knowing how to read those records is really important. So if you find a document where your ancestors show up as 1860 or 1850, that is golden. That means something special. The other thing recently that came about with this same relative, one of his descendants served in the U.S. I found a record for the U.S. Union, where he was a U.S. Civil War Union veteran, or he served in the war, and he's honored. It says that his name is on the wall, so that's a trip I gotta make to see my ancestors' name on this wall of men who served in the Union Army during the Civil War. So that's major. Another thing that I wanted to point out too was, on those census records, very often the relatives of your ancestors are right above or right below, because at the time our people did not move away from each other. They had been stripped on the plantation from their families, and taken to either nearby plantations, in some cases far away, and they kept the name of the slave owner, not because they loved them so much, but because they wanted their ancestors, their children that got taken away from them, to be able to find them later on, hoping that they would be reunited. And so a lot of them did not separate very far for that reason. A lot of times they didn't veer very far away from the plantation, or they didn't veer very far away from each other. So those who were enslaved together a lot of times traveled together. So if they heard of work, places where they could work, or places where they could, have new opportunities, they, shared that information with each other, and then they moved together. They would move together in bulk. The next thing I wanted to bring forth was let's see. I wanted to talk about, in the Indian in your family. Because a lot of people like to say, I'm Indian, we got Indian in our family. And that is something that is very popular in the African American vernacular. I found in my research that was sort of a code word. It didn't really mean Indian. In most cases, it meant there's some mixture that took place, usually on the plantation, if you get my meaning. And that was the code for Indian. So Henry Louis Gates, who is one of my is the African American Finding Your Roots guru from Harvard, Yale, one of those major schools, he has often said in his presentation to his guests that only most African Americans only possess about 8%, 0.8% African, Native American in their ancestry. Now, for me and my siblings probably, we possess a little bit more. I'm at 1.7% according to my ancestry on 23andMe, which indicates that at least 2 of my great-grandparents were Native American. So some people have said, said to me, oh, I can see it, whatever. I don't know what you can see, but but Native American or Indian in the family, as it has been said, is not always Indian in the family. It means sometimes just mixture in the family. In my upcoming book, which I have a companion for, not only did I write a narrative about my experience with ancestry, I also wrote a companion book about how to find your roots and ways that you can, kind of look and what to look for. So again, when you're examining those census records, if you would be careful to look above, and because most times you can find your ancestors. So recently, I'm just going to use an example. I was researching my great-great-grandmother's mother. So that would be my third great-grandmother on my mom's side. And she had a free record. I found Freedmen's Bureau records of hers where her father had opened an account in her name. Her name was Mariah Smith. And his name was Joseph Isaac Smith. And I was able to find her parents' names on this Freedman record. So this was a piece of gold because you don't often see this. And, from that, I was able to find more information on the family. And when I went back to look at the census record where she was living with my great-grandmother Julia, her first child, and her husband, Reese Bradley, right next door were her parents. There she was with Joseph Isaac Smith. And the same lady that was on her record as her mother. So that just confirmed, being able to confirm those records means a lot in the African American experience. Another thing I wanted to address, and this is the last little nugget that I'm going to give for free, is that Freedmen's Bureau. I want to talk about the Freedmen's Bureau. So the Freedmen's Bureau was a post-slavery reconstruction thing where they were trying to help African Americans find their way in the world after slavery. And so they would, there were banks that were established where they could, make deposits and, save their money. And a lot of times it's like $1, maybe $1 a year. Not a whole lot of money. It's just an account that they were opening. Most of the time they would open that account in their children's names. And it's just amazing. I mean, gosh, it's so amazing to see your ancestors' mark. When they say they made their mark, and they make an X mark in the spot mark there. There's also the reality of slavery. So, prepare yourself. I mean, I know we all know, that's part of our history. But when I saw my grandfather, this is my grandfather's grandfather, who I've seen on several records. I knew his name well. His name was Shepherd Adams. And he was actually from the Ivory Coast. His family was from the Ivory Coast. Now, Shepherd's story was very much like the 12 years a slave. He was a person whose family members in Africa paid the man on the boat, the nice white man on the boat, to take his child to the new world. Is what he was convinced of. They were convinced of. And they took his child to the new world. He paid him to do so. And my great-grandfather was taken into slavery. And not only did I see his record, I saw where he was sold from one family member of the Lavore family. I think these people might have been French, last name Lavore. Just something I'm using my inferences. But the Lavore family sold him for $1,000 from one family member to another when he was about 7 years old. And so to see that in writing, it hits different, you know. So that's one thing I want to just warn you about as researcher. You know, some of this stuff hurts. Some of it does really hurt. But it's real. It's the reality of our existence as African Americans. We know the drill. We know the story. We know, you know, what to expect, but we don't really know, you know, until you know. So just prepare yourself for the good, bad, and the ugly. Sometimes you find some very interesting things about yourself and about who you are. And so what Ancestry has done for me is definitely helped me see the resilience that I come from, the kind of hardworking people I come from, the creativity I come from, the warrior spirit I come from. And so when I think that, you know, I can't do this, or, you know, even with writing my books, because God has given me 17 books. He told me I got 17 coming. So this is the first of many, but I already have written, this summer I've written 3 books, and I have 3 companion books, so 6 books in 2 months. Yeah. So but before I knew who I was, I don't think I had the courage to do what I just did. Knowing that you come from people who are creative and resilient and warriors and builders and movers and shakers, and there's so much more to the story that you never knew. Once you find out who it is that you really are, the kind of blood that pumps through your veins, the kind of spirit that, you know, with the very little that these people had as resources, just the determination and the mindset they had to have in order to reach the accomplishments that they did, then you realize, hey, I can do more. All right, I hope this helps, and I hope you'll join me for the next episode of The Unveiling of Us, where I will read an excerpt from my first published book in the next episode. Looking forward. Thank you for joining, and I hope you get something from. I hope you are blessed by this, because that was a blessing to do it. So have a great day.